Ritsuka sighed as he was in the summoning room, preparing himself for his usual summoning. Man. How many times I've been in this room already? I swear, it's like the summoning room here in Chaldea is like a personal room for me in which most of the time, I come in here to summon a servant. And I would either get a servant or a craft essence. Ritsuka then placed the Saint Quartz onto the summoning altar. As he did, he then moved back from the altar and allowed it to do its magic. In an instant, the altar lit up, temporarily blinding him from how bright the light was. The Saint Quartz then disappeared, then formed into multiple blue orbs. Then the blue orbs started to connect with each other and turned into a ring of blue sparks swirling around. Then the ring split into 3 and continued to swirl around. As the light faded, it revealed a gold card showing a robed old man wearing a hood with a long beard holding a staff while carrying a book at the same time. The card then disappeared as a woman appeared. However, as the light faded and revealed who the woman was, Ritsuka was surprised at the woman's looks. Because the woman looked like Merlin with a few alterations. Not only that, but the robes she was wearing were similar to the robes Merlin wears. The only thing that was different between the two was the staff that she was holding, in which the design was completely different and was in white. Greetings, Master of Chaldea. I am Merlin. People call me the Mage of Flowers. Just call me Merlin. I don't care for formalities, Proto-Merlin said with a smile on her face. Ritsuka was speechless upon hearing Proto-Merlin's voice. T, this servant is Merlin? B, but we already have Merlin here. Wait, she must be the Merlin from Arthur's world. Wow, this is something you don't see every day. Not to mention the fact that she sounds like Arturia and her many counterparts, which is also weird because both Arthur and the male Merlin sound the same. Hope that she's different from her male counterpart. Still though, she's beautiful. Master? Are you alright? Proto-Merlin asked, snapping Ritsuka out of his thoughts. HM? Oh, it's nothing. Anyways, welcome to Chaldea, Merlin. My name is Fujimaru Ritsuka. Ritsuka said awkwardly. Proto-Merlin let out a giggle upon seeing Ritsuka's reaction. Now, no need to get all hot and bothered. Just as you see, I am a beautiful older sister who smiles off as watching on your journey. You may call me Merlin Wani-san if you wish. Ritsuka nearly sweat-dropped upon hearing Proto-Merlin's words. Okay. Never mind what I thought earlier. She's definitely like her male counterpart, or maybe even worse. Ritsuka then cleared his thoughts. Anyways, would like a tour of Chaldea? Yes, master. I would like a tour of Chaldea here. After all, this is the place where I'm going to live here, Proto-Merlin said with a smile. Great. Let's go then. Soon, Ritsuka gave Proto-Merlin a tour of Chaldea. As he gave a tour for Proto-Merlin, there were some effects he did not expect. For example, some of the male staff in Chaldea were staring at Proto-Merlin in wonder while the female staff looked at her jealously. Ritsuka sighed at the effects. This is going to be a long day. As they continued walking, it was then that a certain servant passed by. That servant was Arthur Pendragon. Upon seeing his version of Merlin in front of him, Arthur dropped his mouth in shock. And Merlin? Proto-Merlin let out a huge smile upon seeing Arthur in front of her. In an instant, she jumped towards him and gave him a giant hug. Arthur! At that moment, both servants fell to the ground upon female Merlin's hug. And Merlin, what are you doing here? And how did you get here? Well, this young man over there summoned me here. Isn't that obvious? Anyways, Wani-san is here. Are you making any friends here in Chaldea? Or do I need to take care of you just like in the old days? Proto-Merlin asked in a teasing tone. Arthur blushed at what Proto-Merlin just said. Please don't. He muttered in embarrassment as he tried to get off from her. Eventually, Arthur finally got his version of Merlin off from him, making Proto Merlin pout. "TCH. You don't have to do that," Proto Merlin said with a pout. Arthur sighed. Merlin dash. Proto Merlin then tugged on Arthur's ear. "It's Merlin Wani-san." "Got it," she said. Arthur sighed again. "Merlin Wani-san, do you mind if I talk to Master now?" Proto Merlin let out a smile. "Sure. Thank you." Arthur then went over to Ritsuka, who was watching the entire event. "Arthur, are you okay?" Ritsuka asked. "Yeah. I'll be fine. Anyways, Master, be careful of her." "Why?" "Because, for all of her charm, she's an empathetic trickster and a lustful seductress that feeds on dreams. So, she's still Merlin then, just like Arturia and her counterpart's version of Merlin." "Exactly. For now, I'd suggest keeping an eye on her," Arthur said. "Got it." It was then that Proto Merlin suddenly barged into the conversation. "Excuse me, Master, but shall we continue the tour here? Wani-san here is getting impatient," she said with a pout on her face. "Why yeah, you're right about that, Merlin. Let us move on then," Ritsuka replied nervously. "Arthur, do you want to join us?" "Sure. I don't mind," Arthur replied. "And plus, someone needs to keep an eye on her. Who knows what chaos she will cause if Master lets her loose." "Great. Let's go then," female Merlin said joyfully. And then Ritsuka, Arthur, and Proto Merlin soon continued their tour of Chaldea. As they did, Arthur was keeping his eye on Proto Merlin, which made Ritsuka surprised at how much attention Arthur was giving to Proto Merlin. "Wow. I never seen Arthur so focused on something outside of battle. Is his version of Merlin really that troublesome? If so, then I hope both his Merlin and Arturia's Merlin never meet. Who knows what would happen if both meet each other?" However, fate seems to have an answer to Ritsuka's question. Because as soon as that thought came into his head, the group of three bumped into two certain servants. Saber Arturia and Merlin. Ritsuka mentally groaned and face-palmed himself at what just happened. "Oh, come on. As soon as I thought about what would happen if both Merlins meet, this happens. What the heck, man? Is fate toying with me, or what?" The sight of Proto Merlin shocked Arturia, while Merlin was amused and interested with his gender-bent counterpart in front of him. Arthur, is that?" Arthur sighed. "Yes. The woman that is next to me is my world's version of Merlin." Arturia's jaw dropped upon hearing Arthur's statement. "No way. Oh my. So, that's Arthur's version of me, huh? Wow, this is interesting. Especially since his version of me seems to be a woman. Quite funny, I'll admit, since what I am looking right now is practically a gender-bent version of me and young Arturia," Merlin thought with amusement. Meanwhile, Proto Merlin was interested in both Arturia and Merlin while Arthur sighed at the situation in front of him. "Oh dear. This can't be good," Arthur thought. "Oh my. There are two people in front of me that resemble both me and Arthur Kuhn. I wonder who are they?" Considering what Arthur Kuhn said earlier, the man next to the girl might be my counterpart, while the girl might be another version of Arthur. Speaking of which, she has the same voice as me, Proto Merlin thought with interest. Arturia? Are you okay?" Ritsuka asked. "Oh, yeah. I'm just in shock over this," Arturia replied. "I can't blame you. So, I take it that you're Arthur's version of Merlin, correct?" Merlin asked Proto Merlin. "Indeed, and I suppose that you're also Merlin too, correct?" Proto Merlin replied. "Indeed. It's a pleasure to meet you, Merlin, Merlin said as he brought out his hand. Likewise, Proto Merlin replied as she shook his hand. And I suppose the girl next to you is your world's version of Arthur, correct? Yes. Arturia? HM? Oh, yeah. This may sound weird, but it's nice to meet you, Merlin. My name is Arturia Pendragon, Arturia said as she greeted Proto Merlin. I see, nice to meet you, Arturia. My name is Merlin, but you can call me Merlin Wani-san, Proto Merlin said with a smile as she brought out her hand for a handshake. Why yeah. Nice to meet you too, Arturia replied as she responded to the handshake as well. Yup, she's definitely Merlin. After the handshake was done, Proto Merlin suddenly had an idea come into mind. Hey master, is it possible for my male counterpart to give me a tour of Chaldea? Ritsuko was shocked. Eh? Why? Oh, let's just say, I have a good feeling he's going to give me a better tour, no offense. Well, Ritsuko tried to say, but was interrupted by Merlin. I think that's a great idea. Merlin interrupted with an excited tone of voice. Well then again, great minds think alike. But Ritsuko said, but was interrupted again. I agree with you. Ritsuko sighed as both Merlins were on point at something, knowing that there was no way to change their minds. He then turned to Arturia and Arthur. Help me. Arturia and Arthur nodded. Don't worry. We'll keep an eye on them. Thank you. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go then. And Arturia, Arthur, Merlin, and Proto Merlin started walking, leaving Ritsuko behind. As they were walking away, Ritsuko had one thought on his mind. Great, there's two of them now. I hope things don't go out of control. Right now, Merlin and Proto Merlin were having the time of their lives as they were chatting about their lives, including their times when they were teaching Arturia/Arthur, much to both Arturia and Arthur's dismay and embarrassment. So, there was this time where I saw Arturia clean the pigsty, and you want to know what happened next? Merlin asked. What? What happened next? Proto Merlin asked with curiosity and a bit of excitement in her tone of voice. Merlin smirked. Well, let's just say that Arturia started a fight with the pigs, and it lasted quite a while. From what Kay told me, she spent a few days smelling like the pigsties. Proto Merlin chuckled. Well, that sounds like an ordeal to her. Yup. And I suppose you have any stories about Arthur as well? Oh, you have no idea. Let me tell you. Meanwhile, Arturia and Arthur were embarrassed from the stories both Merlins were talking about. Somebody please stop them. This is embarrassing. Arturia and Arthur thought. However, their conversation about Arturia and Arthur would come to an end as it was then that they encountered a certain group of servants. The Knights of the Round. Eh? My king? Merlin? Gawain, Lancelot, Tristan, Bedivere, and Gareth asked. Father? Merlin? Mordred asked. HM? Oh, hey everyone. Merlin cheerfully said. My king, who is that person over there? And why does she look like Merlin? Gawain asked. Well, this person is Merlin from my world, Arthur replied. The Knights of the Rounds dropped their mouths upon hearing what Arthur just said. You're kidding me. They muttered. Yeah. Anyways, Merlin Wani-san is here. Nice to meet all of you. Proto Merlin said. Why yeah. Nice to meet you too, Lancelot replied. Well though. I never knew that our king's male counterpart's Merlin was a woman, how intriguing, Tristan said. Yeah. And her voice sounds exactly like father, it's so crazy, Mordred said. Father? Are you Mordred by any chance? Proto Merlin asked as she turned her attention to Mordred. Why yeah. So what? Proto Merlin giggled. Oh nothing. I was just wondering, since Arthur has a female counterpart, there should be a female Mordred too. Figures. Honestly, I thought you were Merlin's long-lost sister for a moment, Gareth said. Indeed. With those looks, I thought of that too, Bedivere said. I know, right? For a moment, I thought I had a long-lost sister, because of the amount of beauty she was radiating from herself. After all, she looks nearly exactly like me. Merlin said with laughter. Exactly. I thought of the same thing too when I saw my male counterpart for the first time as well. Proto Merlin said with laughter. As Merlin and Proto Merlin were laughing with each other, Arturia, Arthur, and the Knights of the Round had one thought in mind. Great. There's two of them now. I've got a bad feeling about this. However, it was at that moment that another servant came into the hallway, and Arturia, Arthur, the Knights of the Round, and Merlin knew him dearly. Emiya Shirou. Eh? Arturia? Arthur? Mordred? Merlin? Everyone? Shirou said. Ah. Shirou. Arturia said in a happy tone of voice. Hey there Shirou, Arthur and Merlin said. My queen. Gawain, Lancelot, Bedivere, Tristan, and Gareth said. Mother. Mordred said. At that moment, Proto Merlin was interested with the amount of attention Shirou was receiving from Arturia, Arthur, the Knights of the Round, and Merlin. Especially at the part with Mordred calling Shirou mother while the rest of the knights calling him my queen. Oh my. It seems everyone here knows that person who goes by Shirou, but how though? Not only that, but Mordred called him mother while the rest of the Knights of the Round called him my queen. This person seems interesting. Meanwhile, upon seeing Proto Merlin, a few thoughts came to Shirou's head. What the heck? Is that a female Merlin over there? Wait, that must be Arthur's version of Merlin he talked about before. Geez, the similarities between both Merlins nearly look the same. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if some people may think she's Merlin's long-lost sister or something. Shirou? Are you okay? Arturia asked, snapping Shirou out of his thoughts. Why yeah. I'm a bit shocked at seeing her. Shirou said as he pointed at Proto Merlin. Arturia sighed. I can't blame you. Proto Merlin then went in front of Shirou. Hello, my name is Merlin, but you may call me Merlin when San. Who are you? My name is Emiya Shirou. It's a pleasure to meet you Merlin, Shirou replied. Proto Merlin smiled. Nice to meet you Emiya Shirou. For a moment, Shirou was shocked with Proto Merlin's voice. Okay, I know Arthur told me that his Merlin sounds like Arturia, but even hearing it, I still can't believe it. Not to mention the fact that Arthur sounds like Merlin as well. This feels weird. So, what is your relationship to everyone here? Especially after what the Knights of the Round called you earlier, Proto Merlin asked. Well, Shirou tried to say, but he was cut off from Merlin. Well, young Emiya Shirou here happens to be Arturia's former master from his Holy Grail War, the bearer of Avalon, her lover, and finally, her queen, along with being the mother of Mordred as well, Merlin said with a smug look on his face, making Shirou embarrassed. Merlin. Shirou muttered. Proto Merlin was immediately excited upon hearing Merlin's words. Is that so? Are you friends with Arthur then? Well, yeah. Proto Merlin then turned to Arthur. Is that true? Why yeah. Arthur replied nervously, knowing what was going to happen next. What? You have some friends here Arthur. And all this time I thought you would be all alone without San here, she exclaimed with fake tears coming out of her eyes. Arthur sighed at Proto-Merlin's overdramatic act. Merlin. Merlin checked at her female counterpart's actions. Don't worry, your Arthur made some friends here. I guarantee it. Anyways, welcome to Chaldea, where all the fun and entertainment you ever wanted resides here, he said with a smile on his face. Proto-Merlin let out a smile. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Good. Shirou, Arturia, Arthur, and the Knights of the Round let out a sigh of relief as they were glad that both of them didn't cause any trouble in Chaldea upon meeting each other. Or so as they thought. Hey me, can I ask you a question? Proto-Merlin asked her counterpart. Sure. What is it? Merlin replied. You said that Emiya Shirou is Arturia's lover and queen, right? Does that mean they already have sex then? At that moment, everyone blushed furiously at Proto-Merlin's question. Especially Shirou and Arturia. However, Merlin let out a playful smirk. Oh yes. I watched it all from my tower when they did XXX and XXX, Merlin replied. Everyone mentally groaned at Merlin's words. However, in Shirou and Arturia's case, they were having a different reaction. They wanted to kill him so badly. I never thought that Shirou can be that good when doing XXX. Oh, right. Did you know that Arturia's weak spot is located in Merlin said, but was interrupted as he felt two swords touching him. And he knew whose swords are those. Nearly I knew. Shirou and Arturia muttered in anger. Knowing the danger in front of him, Merlin let out a small smile. Well, looks like I got to go. Bye. And then, he left quickly. Merlin. Get back here. Shirou and Arturia yelled as they began to chase him. Meanwhile, Arthur, Gawain, Lancelot, Tristan, Bedivere, and Gareth let out a sigh of disappointment while Mordred was on the ground on all fours, smashing the ground with her fist. Father, mother. Mordred muttered. Damn it, Merlin. Gawain, Lancelot, Tristan, Bedivere, and Gareth muttered. Proto-Merlin let out a chuckle. Well then, looks like I'll be having fun here for quite a while. Make. Proto-Merlin was walking in the hallways of Chaldea, minding her own business. As she did, she passed by the cafeteria and saw something that surprised her. Shirou and the many Arturias he was cooking for them. Shirou. Food. Arturia and her counterparts said in unison. On it. Shirou replied. Wow. I didn't know that Arturia had this many counterparts, especially since some of them comes in different sizes and costumes, and Shirou's cooking for all of them. Wait, does that mean he's the queen to all of them? Wow, that's new. Still, he must have really good stamina to cook for all of them. Speaking of which, I wonder if Arthur has this many counterparts as her. Foe was walking in one of the hallways of Chaldea, hoping to find Shirou. Eventually, he found him, walking alongside with Arturia. However, he noticed that someone was following them. And that someone was Proto-Merlin. Foe slightly growled at Proto-Merlin afar and knew what he had to do. Kick her in the face. And then he ran towards her at high speeds. Meanwhile, Proto-Merlin was stalking the couple as she was hoping to see any embarrassing moments between Shirou and Arturia. Fu, let's see if anything interesting will happen between the two. She thought as she continued to stalk them afar. However, before she could go even further, she felt something hit her face before falling to the ground. And she heard a few certain words. Die Merlin, foe. And then, foe began to fight against Proto-Merlin.